All right, welcome everybody to another weekly webinar here at Prime Ag. As we head into the fall of the year, we just wanted to quickly review and go over some of the hedging basics and fundamentals in here. Again, as guys continue to make sales or look to make sales as we head into fall. So jumping in, hedging real quick, what is it? We're using the board to offset a physical sale at a later date. A couple examples would be buying puts or selling futures. And who we're referencing today, is going to be producers and end users, and typically those hedges are protected with physical grain. This helps limit your risk in using the futures board and markets. And how it differs from speculation, speculation just in a nutshell is not protected by physical grain. You're buying or selling options or futures with the intent of profit or loss. Of course, nobody intends a loss, but it's a very real factor. You have high risk and potentially high reward in speculation. But today we're going to talk about hedging, which again limits your risk with the physical grain or physical bushels that you have on hand. So jumping in here, let's start with the future side of things. Selling a futures position that is marginable. You do have unlimited risk, so you will need to add additional margin if prices move against you. What we mean by unlimited risk is that if you sell a futures contract, the market can go as high as it wants. However, you do have the physical bushels to offset that. So even though the risk in your hedge account is unlimited, it is going to be offset by your physical bushels. That's what makes it a hedge. And you can see that on the next point below. As we go into these examples here, keep in mind there is basis and storage commissions considerations that you'll need to consider that will affect your final price. But we're just going to talk about futures to keep everything simple and clean and easy to understand in here. So going forward, selling a 550 December corn futures contract. Let's say you like the price of corn at 550, so you decide to sell a futures contract. Here's how things are going to break down. If price goes higher, if prices rise, you are going to have a loss in your hedge account. You sold the futures contract. It is now going against you. The market's moving higher. However, you need to keep in mind that your physical bushels, which you're still holding and that you have not delivered or committed to any elevator, you've only committed them to the board, are also gaining that same penny for penny move. So in a quick example, if we were to sell the 550 contract on Monday and on Tuesday, corn is at 560, you would have a 10-cent loss in your hedge account, but it would be offset by a 10-cent gain in your physical bushels. This would bring you back to that 550 net futures price. And then the inverse is also true here. If price goes down, again, you sell that same 550 contract on a Monday. We come in on Tuesday and corn is at 540. You're going to show a gain in your hedge account of 10 cents. However, you need to keep in mind that your physical bushels have now also lost that same 10 cents. That's going to bring you back to that same 550. So a lot of times on the brokerage side for us, we'll get a lot of phone calls at this time. Guys will either have a loss in their hedge account and they're kind of upset and they think that they did something wrong, but they need to remember that they have the physical bushels that are rising as well. And then the flip side is true. A lot of times guys will call in and be excited. They want to know how much they're up in their hedge account, but they have to remember that they haven't delivered their physical bushels either. They're only committed on the board, in which case those have lost the same amount as the hedge account has gained. So just a couple of points here to keep in mind. Now looking at the put option side of things, these are a little bit less risky as far as margin goes. It's considered a fixed risk position. You pay for the premium, your margin, if you will, and then you're done. There is no additional margin if the futures market moves higher or lower against you. The thing to keep in mind, though, is obviously the premium that you pay will be subtracted from your net sales price. And so when you're budgeting, this gives you an idea. You can easily calculate your floor price, and then you can estimate, some higher price potentials as well if the market were to move in that direction. So here's, our example on the put side of things. And these aren't recommendations. These are just the current market conditions and prices. We wanted to have something relevant and easy to refer to. But again, these aren't any current recommendations that we're putting out. But again, if you were to buy the 550 December corn put today, it's going to cost you 35 cents. You can see down here at the bottom that that's going to give you your net floor price of 515. So if futures are at $5 at expiration, remember, you're going to show a gain in your hedge account. You're going to think that this is a great deal. Your put made some money, but you have to remember those same 5,000 bushels that you are still holding have also decreased the same amount in value, and that's going to bring you back to that 515 floor price. Now on the flip side, okay, if corn goes higher, and we're using $6 in this example, you're going to show a loss in your hedge account. The premium of your option is going to be worthless, and your physical bushels are going to gain that same amount. So again, if we have a $6 price at expiration, less your 35 cents you paid for the option, that's going to give you the 565 net futures price. And again, this is where on the brokerage side of things, we can get some phone calls from guys saying, hey, my hedge account, why is my put, I spent this money, my put's worthless. Well, you have to remember those same physical bushels that you're still holding have now gained in value. And so again, make sure you take the time to do some of the math to see. And in this example, you forego a 550 futures price and end up with a 565 futures price. So you got a 15-cent gain by waiting. Whether that's worth it or not to you, I don't know. We're just showing you the example of how this thing works out. But remember, the main overall point in here is that if you're putting a hedge on, either your physical bushels are gaining and your hedge account is losing, or your hedge account is gaining and your physical bushels are losing. Okay, quickly jumping over to the margin side here. Margin is your cash outlay to hold a contract on the futures board. Anytime you buy or sell a contract, you are required to put some margin up. So looking at corn today, your initial margin to sell or buy a corn futures contract is $2,585. Okay, futures contracts, are leveraged. Basically, you need 10% of the full value of a contract to put this position on. What do I mean by that? Well, if you were to buy this outright, let's say like a stock, you would need $27,500 at today's 550 price to purchase one contract of corn. Okay. So if you were to, let's say you were to lay out that full cash, $27,500, if the market were to go down a penny, you would obviously just see that removed off of your $27,500. In this case, we're using margin, again, back to that 10% of the value of the contract. So if price moves against you a penny, you're going to need to deposit that penny or $50 into your account to continue to hold that position. Now, again, keep in mind, if you're doing these 4 hedge positions, your physical bushels will gain or lose that same penny in the opposite direction of your futures contract. So as we talked about previously in the corn side of things, if you sell the 550 December corn futures and they go down to 540, you're going to have a 10-cent gain in your account. You're going to show a 10-cent loss on your physical bushels. Vice versa, if corn goes to 560, you're going to show a 10-cent gain in your physical bushels, 10-cent loss in your hedge account, at which point you probably need to deposit margin. So again, we always encourage guys, budget a little extra for margin. Your initial margin doesn't really get you very far unless you have perfect execution and the market goes, in your favor from there on out. So, for example, let's say you want to give futures a 10-cent room. That would be about an additional $500. So call it $3,000 rounded to send in for margin to get you through that first 10-cent move in the market. So final thoughts here, on hedging. Basically, know what you're doing before you initiate a position. Talk with your broker, your bookkeeper, yourself. Make sure that is it a hedge? Are you offsetting physical bushels? Do you have the physical bushels? Okay, grain contracts, 5,000 physical bushels. So if you're using them as a hedge, you need that 5,000 physical bushels to offset. If you are not using physical bushels, it is speculation. There is no other rhyme, reason, way to define it. You either have the bushels or you don't. Okay. Some benefits of these hedge positions, again, they transfer futures price risk to the board, and that can give you some flexibility in that you can leave basis open. See if you can get an improvement. You can choose your delivery point. You don't have to commit to a certain elevator. Same thing with the delivery time. Maybe you want to deliver in October, or maybe you want to wait till November. Whatever's convenient for you. Using the board gives you that flexibility. It also allows you more time to make a decision. Again, on the put side of things, you can calculate a price floor. You can determine that you would like to, forego today's prices to see if you can get a better price in the future, while maintaining a price floor downside protection, some insurance, if you will. So again, that can have its benefit if you're bullish or unsure of the market. You think maybe this thing can go higher, but of course you don't want to get wiped out. You buy a put, keep yourself in the market, and then see what happens as you get closer to expiration. And then the other thing too is just have cash set aside for margin. If you're using these for hedges, margin is not a bad thing. It gets a bad rap. But really it just comes down to budgeting. And again, going back to that first point, know what you're doing before you initiate a position. When you go and offset these physical sales with your hedge account, your bookkeeping should line up to get your cash back in your hands, at the same net price. Obviously, like I said, depending on what your basis and storage and then commissions are. So have a plan. Like I said, know what you're doing before you initiate these positions. We get a lot of calls from guys, depending on what's going on in their hedge account, and they forget what's going on the physical bushel side of thing as well. So if you have questions, feel free to email us, admin@prime-ag.net. We'll have that linked below. If you found this video helpful, make sure to like it. And if you want to be notified for any additional or every time we post some new content, make sure you hit the subscribe button. And like I said, send us an email if you have questions. If you have ideas for topics on the next webinar, we'd love to hear them. And thanks again for tuning in, and we'll see you next week.